Rear-wheel drive with a powerful petrol engine and a very sleek design. This is the Nissan Z, and this one here is the Nismo, which is more powerful and has more focus to it than the other versions. But is it worth the extra money? Well, I'll tell you in this review what I think and whether you should spend more to get the Nismo. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, ring the bell, and let me know in the comments if there's any other sports cars that you'd like me to review. I like doing these cars, unsurprisingly. All right, let's get to it, shall we? Yeah! Before I got into the Nismo Z, I didn't actually know how much it cost, and when I learnt that this is $94,000 before on-road costs, I was a little bit shocked. To me, it is expensive. It doesn't necessarily seem to make that much more sense compared to the $15,000 less standard Z, and I've driven it as well, and look, I don't want to do too much of a spoiler alert here, but I don't know whether I'd be choosing the Nismo, but hey, if you're a Z fan, if you're a Nissan fan, if you've owned Nismo models before and you just have to have this one, well, there is a little bit of extra kit to justify the cost. But let's talk about the standard spec on the regular versions. You're getting things like full LED lighting around the car, 19-inch alloy wheels, you've got launch control, there's tire pressure monitoring, there's a 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster and an 8-inch touchscreen media system with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It looks a little bit outdated. It's got a pretty average looking camera system as well. And you're also getting things like a Bose sound system, heated seats, power adjustable front seats, leather accented upholstery. But there's also a really clever trick with that standard version. Because it's got the standard seats, it's also got an ISO fix point and a top tether in the passenger seat. So you can turn off the front passenger airbag, and it makes it the world's most practical sports car, kind of. But let's talk about the Nismo version, this one here, which, yes, it gets more power, baby, as James would say. And yeah, that is a pretty sizable kick up the backside. I'll get to the powertrain specs shortly, but it also gets more spec, including the Nismo exterior and interior styling changes. There's larger front brake rotors. You get these gloss black raised 19-inch wheels, Dunlop SP Sport Max tires. There's also enhanced engine cooling, a Sport Plus drive mode. There's launch control and active sound control, which have both been tuned by Nismo. You get the Nismo branded leather and Alcantara Recaro seats, but they miss out on heating and power adjustment and that ISO fix point. And look, I think that for the interior, you're getting things like the leather and Alcantara trimmed steering wheel as well, but hey, I'll show you what it's like in there in a sec. But let's talk about some alternatives to this, because there are some ones that you might want to consider. Right, so let's say the $94,000 price tag of the Nismo doesn't necessarily scare you away. Well, you might want to go and have a look at the Ford Mustang GT. I know that's a bit of a strange alternative to recommend straight off the bat, and it is a muscle car more than a sports car like this, but it still has sporty driving dynamics, and it's got a huge and very, very enjoyable 5-litre V8 engine with monstrous amounts of power and torque. It's an absolute character, that car, and a real hoot as well, and actually more practical than this because it's got back seats as well, despite the fact that it's not that much bigger on the outside. Another option you might want to consider if you are thinking that Japanese is where your brain is at, well, the Toyota Supra is a really good one. The GR Supra has a very powerful 6-cylinder engine, again, rear-wheel drive. And look, it is a very, very interesting looking car. I don't necessarily think it looks good, but there are some angles that I think look better than others. And the interior, well, it is a byproduct of a co-developed program between BMW and Toyota, and you can really tell that on the inside because there are plenty of BMW bits. And another alternative, in fact, that I reckon you should check out is the BMW 2 Series, in particular the M240i xDrive Coupe, which has immense power and torque. It's not necessarily at the same level as an M2, but it's closer to the Nismo Nissan Z on price, so it might make a bit more sense to you. You're getting a BMW instead of a Nissan, which might be a big tick in your book as well. But tell me what you would choose out of those or something else. Let me know. Yes, you can tell it is a Nismo by, well, the fact that it's got the red accents around the bottom of the car, and it's also got the Nismo badge at the front. And I reckon this car is one of the nicest looking new generation models with still a retro vibe to it. It looks, you know, in tune with what the Z has meant for so long. It's low slung, it's sporty, it's still relatively small at about 4.4 meters. And this Nismo model also gets different wheels, as I mentioned. It gets the sportier Dunlop tyres, and they're a staggered set, so the rears are wider than the fronts, and it just looks fantastic in my mind. This rear end design in particular is really quite fetching, I think. But there is one thing about the rear end that I don't love, and it's this boot lid. It's a bloody pain in the ass. So you have to press this button underneath the Nissan badge to open it, and that's where it opens up. Like, it doesn't actually open individually. And when I've opened it from the inside of the car, every single time it's failed. So I guess that could just be this car, but it also could be really, really annoying. Now, in the back here, you do have, well, a kind of weird shaped, it's almost like an hourglass shaped boot area. You'll see the cargo capacity on your screen now. And I'm also going to show you a little clip of my mate Dave's experience with this car. He had it just before me, and he had a flat tire. And because this car does not come with any kind of spare wheel, I'll just show you underneath here, there is no spare wheel or anything like that. You get a subwoofer, which is probably less useful than a spare, and a tire repair kit, which has obviously been replaced because Dave had a bit of an issue with it. Have a look at that clip now.
No spare tire. Instead, this thing has a Bose subwoofer in the boot. And let me tell you, in a time like this, you really appreciate having a great stereo and not a spare tire in the car. So we use the puncture repair kit. It's this cool little box that has a compressor in it, as well as a can of goo that you can use to fill up holes in the tire. You hook up the compressor to the tire and then plug it into the car, switch it on, and then give it about 5 minutes or so.
Now, you still do get a top tether point down there, which is actually pretty handy. If you do want to anchor in a child seat, you can, but you don't get the ISOFIX points in that front seat. So I guess it is still pretty practical for this Nismo version, but that other version just makes a bit more sense if you are actually planning to take your kid in the front of your sports car. I've done it, and it was mad. She loved it. Rightio, so here's your point of view perspective of the Nismo Z interior. And from this angle, it doesn't actually look all that different to the other versions. You do get little Nismo badges in the cluster there, as you can see, but it's the seats that really stand out. These Nismo branded Recaro seats with manual adjustment. They are super sculpted and super supportive, and actually surprisingly quite comfortable. They are a little narrow across the base. If you have big hips, you might find that it is a little bit tight, but they are super beautiful as well. I love this trim, just looks fantastic. Now, you've also got some Alcantara trim on the door cards, as you can see. There's bottle holders down there, and this sort of fake leathery finish that runs up onto the dashboard is okay, I reckon, but it is a $94,000 car. It maybe feels just a little bit plain in some ways in terms of the finishing. I like that you've got this Alcantara and leather trimmed steering wheel with the straight ahead marker so you can figure out where you're going next. And I like this digital instrument cluster as well. It has a fair bit of easy to interact with information and stuff on there that's not too hard to get your head around, which is really good. It works better when the car's driving, obviously, and it also alters when you change the drive mode. So yes, you do have a few different drive modes to play with there as well. There's a little switch down there to control those. Your start button's down there. Shifter is kind of a strange looking unit, but it's good enough, I reckon. You've got your boot release button. As I said, I've struggled to get it to work properly. One cup holder, which is not ideal. And you've also got a manual handbrake for whatever you might have fun doing with that. There's another cup holder hidden underneath this armrest, which is so silly. That's one of the silliest designs I think I've seen. You've also got a little covered center console bin as well. Behind those seats, there is extra storage, so you could easily fit a couple of overnight bags in there. And in fact, when you look at it from this angle, there's quite a bit of space back there in terms of storage. And look, I think that the big letdown in here really is this screen. Compared to modern cars, this does not feel overly modern. It's an 8-inch touchscreen. You have to plug in for CarPlay and Android Auto. And I think that it's, you know, it's decent in some ways. It's certainly not high tech. And I like the fact that you do get a volume dial and a tuning dial as well as some physical buttons. So I like that element to it, but it's just small and a bit pixelated looking and not necessarily as high tech as something else that you might consider. like a Mustang or a BMW. But you do get manual dials for the air conditioning. I love that. I love that you can just quickly turn the fan speed up or turn the temperature down and not muck around too much. Yes, you can see my phone is plugged in to the USB spot there, and in there is no wireless phone charger, which is a bit of a disappointment, I reckon. So look, the interior, okay, but certainly not as wow factor as I was probably hoping it would be for this kind of cash. Oh yeah, look, I should also call out, you've got those gauges up the top there, which will help you figure out your vitals when you're thrashing it. And you also do have a few other features up here that I want to show you. Auto dimming rear vision mirror, which is good. These yellowy lights up there, no sunglasses holder, but you do get a parking ticket holder there, which is handy, and illuminated vanity mirrors on both sides as well. So that is all pretty good, but like I said, maybe just a little bit budget feeling for the money. All Nissan Zs use a twin turbocharged 3-litre V6 engine with rear-wheel drive. The standard Z pumps out a mammoth 298 kilowatts and 475 newton meters. It's available with a 6-speed manual or a 9-speed auto for the same price. And the Nismo Z, which is this one here, is 309 kilowatts and 520 newton meters. So it does get a sizable kick up the backside. It also gets improved cooling, increased turbo boost and turbine speed, an independent ignition spark timing strategy, which is apparently inspired by the GTR Nismo. It's also obviously designed to be able to cope with some track driving as well. And yes, the 9-speed automatic transmission has also been tuned by Nismo, and it's the exclusive transmission option. So you can't get it with a manual, which may rule it out for the more hardcore enthusiast. But let's see what the drive is like, hey? So I've already turned off the lane keeping assist, and we're going to start off in standard drive mode because we'll talk about the day-to-day driving elements of this car first and foremost, then we'll go for a bit of a more spirited drive, hey? So I think that what has surprised me most about it is that this is a focused sports car, but it is so livable on the daily basis. Like, if you're just tooling around town and you're not necessarily asking everything of this car, it is, you know, manageable. In fact, it's quite livable on a daily basis around town, urban driving, stop start, that sort of thing. Even if you did long distance commuting, you'd find it to be a pretty enjoyable experience. I did a couple of 100 Ks in it yesterday driving into the city and back, and hey, it was easy peasy. So livability, perfectly fine in terms of the standard drive mode and just standard driving, but let's see what it's like when we put it into sport mode, hey? So let's, oh yeah, more noise straight away. Whoa, yeah, more speed as well. Like, it's typically fast even without it in sport mode, but when you put your foot down with the sport mode engaged, wow, yeah, okay. It is a bit of a machine. It's a bit of a speed machine, and there is a bit of lag. Like, you've got 9 gears to play with and a 6-cylinder engine with twin turbos, so there's a bit of work to be done before things get moving, but when they do, they move really quickly. Now, it doesn't have adaptive suspension or anything like that. When you do change those modes, the suspension is, you know, a static setup, so it doesn't adjust the suspension comfort or firmness, but it does still have a pretty rigid ride in most situations, so that might take a little bit of getting used to. Now, if you're the sort of person who likes the car to communicate with you, this is going to be a really joyful experience for you because you can feel what's happening at the tires level. Like, when you do put your foot down and if you're coming out of a corner, it will sort of squirm a little bit and you can just feel everything that's happening through your body, through the seat, through the steering wheel, and I love that about it. I love that communicative nature that this car has, because it's fun to drive just in boring situations. That's the kind of thing that this car offers you. Like, just crossing a couple of intersections and stuff, you sort of like, yeah, you can feel the pivot of the car. You can feel that it wants to, well, make things more fun. So It does bog down a little bit though in the Sport Plus mode with the traction control, just trying to take a bit more control, rightfully so. Usually I leave sports cars like this to their own devices when it comes to the transmission, but in this instance, I think that if you're confident, the paddle shifters are actually a game changer, because it does mean that you get a bit more involvement out of this car. It is more thrilling when you are in control of the shifts, because as I said, it does have this tendency to upshift a little bit too early, and you can actually explore the potential a bit more when you do take control of those shifts yourself. All right, so we're in Sport Plus mode now. Whoa, whoa. That's a different level of liveliness, I'm telling you, far out. Yep, you can feel so much more movement from this car. Oh, I've got to be mindful that there's a rock wall right there. Oh man. Wow, this is fast. And the brakes are good too. You've got plenty of stopping power. It's certainly a speed machine, and it stops as well as it goes, far out. Yep, that's good. And the handling, like, yeah, it feels like it just wants to rotate. It wants to spin a little bit. Oh my word. Okay, I better slow down. That is properly quick. And as you saw on my face, properly fun. Yeah, but like I said, I do think that the best job that this car does is when you're in the more aggressive drive mode, when you've got the manual mode selected and you're using the shifters, and that is when you get the most out of it from the driver's perspective. It's also really comfortable, which is surprising. Like I said, it's an easy car to live with on the daily. But let's talk about fuel consumption, hey? On your screen, you'll see the official combined cycle fuel consumption figure for the Nissan Z, not the Nismo. And now I'll put up what the Nismo is said to use. Look, the manual version in the base grade is actually the thirstiest, but the Nismo does have a bit more grunt, so it uses a little bit more than the standard Z, but it's not necessarily bad in terms of fuel consumption, I don't think. And I've found that across a mix of driving, including some jaunts that were, well, heavy-footed, yeah, it does have a pretty decent fuel consumption in reality. You'll see what I've seen on your screen now. And if you're wondering, it does have a decent sized fuel tank capacity. You'll see it on your screen. And also it runs on 95 RON premium unleaded. So it doesn't have the thirst for the most premium stuff. This car doesn't come with an ANCAP safety rating or a Euro NCAP rating either, so it's not necessarily going to be the box tick up for some people, but it does still have the full suite of active safety tech that you would expect. Things like autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist detection. There's a lane keeping system, which is pretty easy to turn off and it stays off, thankfully. There's also blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, a set of parking sensors, and also a rear view camera, which is a little bit pixelated looking for the modern day. Now, there's also airbag coverage for the front seats, as you would expect. There are no rear airbags, but you do get dual front and front side airbags in this car. Did you know that Nissan now offers a 10-year, 300,000 kilometre conditional warranty? So if you service your vehicle with Nissan, well, that's what you'll get, a decade or 300,000 Ks of warranty. But if you don't, you get a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty. Now, the servicing is pretty good. You'll see the service intervals on your screen for this model, and also the service costs are capped for the first 5 visits. So that is good to see, and they're not bad in terms of the pricing as well. If you do service with Nissan, you'll get up to 10 years of roadside assistance included too. So lots of deal sweeteners there. Plus the brand also offers a guaranteed future value program. So if you go through their finance offering, well, you can guarantee the resale of your car as well. Not bad. If you want a Nismo Z and you've got the money to buy one, well, I could see why you would, because this is a fun and sporty and kind of old school drive experience. Like, you know, so many cars these days are tech laden and maybe a little bit annoying because of that, but this is just like pure driving fun, and it is an absolute monster of a thing as well. So tell me what you think about it in the comment section below. Would you go for the Nismo, just the standard Z, or would you choose something else? I'd love to hear from you. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and ring that bell for me. Thanks, I'll see you in the next one.